Hey, welcome to the Thinking Podcast by Nootrobox. I'm your co-host, Michael Brandt.
And I'm Geoffrey Wu.
And today we're continuing our discussion about the axioms of Nootrobox. So what are the fundamental truths that we see in the world and that are important to the way that society operates and where things are going in general? And today we're talking about the third axiom, which is that hard work is a means towards self-actualization. So we're going to unpack that and see what are people who are self-actualized, what do they look like, what do they do, what are some strategies for being self-actualized. But let's begin at the beginning and talk about, hey, what does it even mean to be self-actualized?
Yeah, and before I get into that, for those watching on YouTube, you might notice we're wearing the same clothes from episode 2, but I'm wearing the thinking cap now, so good eye. So we're taping on the same day, and we're talking about episode 3. So self-actualization. I think this is one of our more philosophical axioms, right? I think in episode 1 and 2, humans as a system and intellectual ability as the driving force of civilization are definitely more, historical, more concrete pieces of historical evidence where we're making a value judgment and like an importance judgment where like I'm not a fundamental believer of like universal ethics or morality, but I think in terms of like how we operate in this world, we are making like, hey, this is like something that we want to talk about, be a part of our lives, and I think is positive for the world. And self-actualization to me comes down to two main threads. One, being able to express myself and communicate with full bandwidth, meaning that, hey, I'm not censoring myself. I can really project my ideas into the universe around me. And then 2, retaining the sense of creativity and playfulness. I think we've all have, I'm curious to hear your personal stories about this as well. All have had like this experience, I think, especially as children when we're growing up. And, for me personally, it's like playing with Legos or building model airplanes. I remember having like, I would buy model Gundams and build them, playing like these Warhammer figurines that were like sci-fi or fantasy characters that I'd build and glue together and paint.
Yeah.
And it was like very playful, very fun, fully engrossed, wanting to improve my skills and be better. And being able to like fully be in that like playful, creative mindset forever, I think is, and then being able to express that well and communicate that very well is my definition of self-actualization.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned being a kid, being creative. I think that this notion of hard work is a means towards self-actualization. Another way of saying it is just doing work that you're proud of helps you to understand yourself and to feel good in general.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated of a notion. And as kids, I think we all have it, where we're playing in the sandbox or we're playing with Legos and we're creative and we're impulsive and we're doing things and we're doing what we want and we like what we're doing and we're not thinking about what we should be doing or what other people or want it to look like or how it should look like, and we're just kind of doing. We're very untrained. That's why kids are kids. They're not trained, but they're very honest and themselves. And it's like, how do you hold on to that sense of play, of creation, of self, while you're also becoming experienced in the world and being told what to do and seeing like best practices, and you're learning stuff in school and you're kind of forced to fit into some mold. How do you get the best of that while also be able to do work that feels unique and personal and stuff, something that you're proud of, that we're working on it is a way of discovering yourself.
Yeah, I like the word impulsiveness. And I think maybe a synonym is like randomizing, right? Like it's about like throwing chaos into like a rote system where you can like do something that might be dumb but might be brilliant as well. And this is actually one of the points that actually got good feedback on our initial blog post about this, about Ashay Modi actually wrote, hey, would also love to understand how you got to axiom 3. Hard work is a means of self-actualization. While it seems intuitively correct, there are millions of cases of hardworking people not happy with their lives. Perhaps there is distinction between working hard and working smart.
Right.
Curious to get your...
Yeah, because you could see someone saying like, okay, I want to be a full bandwidth communicator. I want to walk into a room and just be myself. I want to do all that stuff. Like, you could do that, Jeff, but I don't even know who I am. I don't even know who that is. Once I figure out who I am and once I figure out my identity, sure, I can be really loud and confident about it, but how do I do that now? Like I'm working hard, but I don't necessarily feel like some crazy sense of like self-actualization. Like what even is that?
Yeah, and even I think sort of tying it back to episode 2, where we're talking about all these road to laborers that are doing physical labor. Some of the folks that are picking fruit in our farms in California, that's hard labor. We're in like luxury compared to that.
Hard compared to what
that's hard physical labor. But do we think that's truly satisfying? I mean,
and I think one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten is that everyone's job is hard. Like everyone's job is hard. Everybody's job. It's hard to be a waiter. It's hard to work at a front desk. It's hard to be bored. It's hard to be challenged. It's hard to do this. It's hard to do everything. Everyone's job is hard. So I don't think it makes sense to be like, oh, this is like it's really hard to be doing what we're doing or what they're doing. Like, yeah, picking strawberries, super hard, way harder than what I do every day. But I think that there's this thing of like,
what's the difference?
What's the difference between like hard work and not feeling self-actualized versus the sense that we mean that hard work is a means towards self-actualization? And I think that's where the sense of like taking who you are and extending it into the
communication
world, rather than like just consuming, like hearing what other people have to say, consuming culture, everything is inbound and you're kind of like taking it in, versus all of these things, this impulse, this creation, this getting a sense of you out into the world and discovering who you are through doing that. I think, like, let's talk about some ways that people can do that, because I think, again, there are a lot of people who are working hard at something, but they don't feel like they're necessarily being like creative or putting themselves out into the world. It's not
fulfilling, right?
They don't necessarily feel like full bandwidth communication. You can't just go into your job and like tell your boss like to F off, right? You can't just like go and be blunt and honest. Like you can't just
the
like
product sucks.
Right.
You gotta fix this.
You can't just quit your job and write like the next American novel, great American novel. Like there's like a difference, or like what are some like strategies? What are some like things to get going to see the sense of like hard work being a means of self-actualization?
Yeah. So I think the fine tuning of that axiom would be hard work that's fulfilling, and in the two ways, echoing back, is being able to express yourself fully. I think that's we're a part of this like social agreement, social contract as a civilization, as an organization, right? And herd mentality pulls people back into the norm, back into the mean, right? So it's actually very hard to be able to self-actualize by fully expressing yourself. I think you have to just do it. Like I think it's I think one way to like help jump over that hurdle is pretend that you're playing a video game character of yourself. Yeah. Where there's like less ego tied to like your opinions and being called out, being wrong, and you're just like, hey, you're puppet mastering this Geoffrey Wu character, this Michael Brandt character, and you're gonna say what this character thinks is true and not be afraid of like the pushback.
Yes.
And then I think I sort of use this trick as I was like improving as a speaker and as a leader, to be like, hey, it's a little bit awkward to like call something out, but fuck it, like we're gonna say it, we're gonna put it out there. And then you quickly realize, hey, like people respect that. People, I think, all have the sense of like what's actually going on. If you just can call it out in a logical, rational way, I think people respond well. And you realize even if you're wrong, it's not that bad. You're like, oh yeah, I didn't consider this.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, this idea of being willing to open your mouth and not have to be 100% correct. This idea of especially, okay, there's this notion a lot of people I think have, which is once I figure out my identity, once I figure out what I'm about, then I'm going to go really hard.
Right.
Like once I figure out what I want to like spend my life on, yeah, I'm going to go totally hard at that. But for now, I don't really know, so I'm just going to watch Netflix. And like, I think it kind of works the opposite way around, where if you're not sure really who you are, then being a full bandwidth communicator, blurting out what's on your mind, doing little creative things throughout the day, like extending yourself, like giving a damn, putting your opinions out there. I think what starts happening is through trial and error, there's certain things that you feel really good about. You start doing things that you're really proud of. You're like, hey, I'm glad I said that. I'm embarrassed I said that. And then what starts happening is you start etching in certain aspects of your personality where you're like, hey, I'm really proud of when I've done this. Like most people don't do this. And then you can start kind of predicting where your impulse is going to go in the future. You can start saying, oh, I'm the type of person that does this. These are like the core things of my identity that I've unearthed because I've been more improvisational.
You're randomizing, you're doing action. I think the key word also here is action.
Yeah.
Right? You can't theory craft like who you are.
No, yeah.
You have to like throw yourself out there and try and do things.
And I think then some of the way, going back to like one of the questions, the question on our blog post, which is that like, hey, how do you do this if you feel like you're working hard, like at your job, but you're not necessarily getting this sense? I would say that there's still always room for some creativity to like, you're not everyone can go found the next Facebook. Like that's like an impossible thing to do. It's like a very difficult thing to do, but you can be creative in other things, right? You can create a business on the side. You can write a 100-word piece every morning. You could make yourself take 10 photographs every day.
Randomize, like do things.
And I think what's really interesting is so this is actually something I've done is like, and when I taught I've been teaching at the Academy of Art for a few years here, and one of the assignments that we do is write 100 words a day. So write exactly 100 words every single day. And when students do that, you kind of have this thing that's reserved. It's this thing that catches ideas, and it's really interesting to see like each person is gonna put a different thing into 100 words.
Right.
And what catches your eye and makes you want to write about is going to be very different from me and from the next person. And then if you just force yourself to do that for a month and then you look back on that for a month, it was hard work, but guess what? You're also like literally in looking at that, you're getting a sense of yourself. Like what's your sense of humor like? What's your attention to detail like? What kind of themes like do you like things that are sad or melancholy? Do you like things that are bold and confusing? Do you like things that are sci-fi? Like what things get you? Do you really like characters? Do you really like
playfulness
puzzles?
and creativity tying back in here, right?
Right.
Like,
and you don't necessarily
what sparks you? What attracts you?
I think a common thing is like people want to figure out, oh, what kind of writer am I? And then if I figure out like what kind of stuff I want to write about, then I'm gonna go write that book or that blog post. It's like, why don't you just start writing blog posts and then figure out which ones you like, and then that's the kind of writer that you are.
Yeah, and if you look at tech analogies of like some of the best companies that we've seen in recent history, Facebook, right? It was like Zuckerberg's like 17th project. He had like his Wirehog thing. He had like Face Smash. He had like a music thing that Microsoft wanted to buy. If you think about Uber, literally like Travis Kalanick wanted to hire a CEO to run the damn thing because he didn't want to freaking run it. He didn't, it was playful. They wanted a black car service to look really baller to their friends. And then they were able to like, that action like led them to like actually see the demand, actually see the possibility, that playfulness, the ability to be like, hey, what if we, did ride sharing? What if we, started delivering food? What if we just had automatic car networks, period, and then unlock this massive, super valuable opportunity?
And I think what happens when you start playing around is something hits, something sticks where you like it a lot, or your friends like it a lot, or people in the world at large like it a lot, and it came from you, and then you're like, you kind of have this realization of, oh, that came from me. I made that up. I'm kind of good at that thing. Let me do more of that.
Right.
Like that's really resonating. Let me go really long on that. Let me go 110% at that. Let me like keep applying to that thing. And whether it's a side project, a hobby, or whether it's something that you can commit your career to, then it kind of builds on itself, where you've seen that you've made this thing and then you keep wanting to make it, and it becomes this thing that you want to work hard at. And that's, I think, a fundamental thing that we hold to be true, is that you should have something in your life that you want to go like 110% at. There should be something, and if not, you should be going 110% at exploring to find out what that thing is.
Yeah, I agree absolutely 100%. I always like to tie things into, historical or philosophical concepts, right? Existentialism, Sartre, Sartre, like, the notion you have to create your own meaning. I fundamentally, am sort of nihilist in the sense that like, hey, there's no true purpose of life, but you got to create it. And I think by doing things, by putting your ego and creativity out in the world and communicating that is, and then playing this, I think what you mentioned was great, like this fulfilling positive feedback loop where you're doing something, you like it, you get better, keep improving. Now you slowly become world class at it.
And you know what else starts happening is other people who are kind of tapped into the same thing, they start to notice, and so then you're good at creating stuff. Other people who are good at creating stuff want to be around you because you're fundamentally like making things happen.
Right.
I think it's important to remember that the status quo in the world is that nothing really happens.
Right.
Like nothing goes on. Businesses don't just happen. Like
right.
you don't just get a degree. Like the status quo is nothing happens. You actually have to make things happen. And it's like embracing
We've
that.
seen that at Nootrobox,
Yeah.
right? Like just physically, like as personal examples here, right? Like we have to lift like the company into existence. Like default is like nothing happens, company's dead.
I remember, when we first launched, had 30 something customers.
Yeah, we had a pre-sales page, had 34 pre-orders, and we had to pack our own boxes because we had no fulfillment center. Literally out of my living room essentially, where we were packing boxes, and at a point we were doing like 12, 14-hour days, and because we're doing like hundreds a month before we finally figured out how to do warehouse stuff.
Right.
And yeah, the default is nothing, so you get to and I think a lot of it is like we worked hard, but it wasn't necessarily fulfilling perhaps at the point to be like packing boxes and like putting shipping labels on. But that journey of like randomizing and action, getting to biohacking and looking at supply chains and like talking to interesting researchers and pulling together this awesome team that we have now, that's enabled us this platform to like be talking to you, be talking to some of the most important regulators, to the researchers and technologists working in biohacking today.
Yeah, I think it comes from that
playfulness of like, hey, let's like
it felt right to do, even though like it didn't scale, even though we like left jobs where we were making actual money, and then we were just
you read Google.
We were just doing stuff for like almost just for fun, and that was a really cool position to even be in, to be able to like float to do a startup. But it made sense to do that because it's like, hey, there's something there where like we're working hard and it's something that we're making, and if we do it well and it resonates, then we earn the right to work hard on bigger problems.
Yes.
It's like, I think in order to work, I think a lot of people are like, yeah, if I was Elon Musk, I would work really hard. If I was Steve Jobs, if I was designing iPhones, I would work really hard. If I had the coolest job in the world, I would work really hard. But I think what people forget about is like no one's hiring for like CEO of Tesla or something. Like or the person who's going to be CEO of Tesla is like currently like COO of Tesla, right? Like no one's hiring for that. The way to get there is you have to solve like really, really small problems. Like you have to figure out like some really basic thing first. Like you have to figure out things that seem like too little, but what you get good at is this sense of like making things happen, like breaking the status quo. And it's almost like I like the video game thing. It's this XP, like level 1 is like write blog posts or like put stuff on the internet, like just
put shipping labels on boxes.
Right. Like do some basic thing, like start a side company, like the thing that you want to do, get 10 customers and take them out on boats on the weekend. I don't know, like whatever your thing is, like do that thing, like teach people, go walk around your city and teach people how to take photographs, right? Have people sign up to take photographs and show them around. I don't know, like have a basic thing, have a cool collection, build a thing as a hobby. Like
you might meet someone that you riff with and you have more ideas, right? Like it's like that randomization, that impulsiveness, that playfulness, where you start seeing these things start adding up and stacking up together. And
then it's not running away from that. It's saying like, hey, yes, I'm extending myself. I'm working hard in this thing that's out there in the world that can fall apart and crumble. It can fail. It can be judged. It's putting those things out there, but saying like, instead of running away, I'm going to double down on it. Instead, like I'm going to make this castle I'm building can get knocked over, but I'm going to make it even bigger. Like you shouldn't worry about it falling, because guess what? Like if all you're doing is consuming and like taking in Netflix shows and food and just like consuming culture, then you're not having any of that authenticity. You're not like taking yourself and like extending it out, right? When we think of like great leaders, we think of people who like they have their personality, but they're also inventing cures for diseases. They're starting movements. They're doing interesting things. Like we think like this is one thing we try to do every day on our Nootrobox Instagram is highlight people who have done exactly this. People who are self-actualized, right? Like Amelia Earhart, like she did something. Like she was her, but like what she represents is something much bigger than just like an average person's life. Like she represents this like sense.
I want to fly. There's no woman pilots. I wanted to do something that was impossible, cross Atlantic, do a circumnavigation around the world, right? Like, yeah, I think that's, everyone should, I want to do that. I think all of us should be striving for that. And in whatever magnitude that we can. I think to be clear, right? I think, some people, and I think we're in lucky positions where we're more able to economically and financially be able to like be more aggressive on pursuing quote unquote our dreams.
Yeah,
but I
absolutely.
think, there are folks out there who, perhaps, you might be listening now where they're just like, you gotta, pay the bills. You gotta do the 9 to 5 to
Absolutely.
pay for your parents' cancer treatments, or you gotta pay for your kids, save for your kids' college fund. But don't like, I would say to, people in that circumstance, don't give up. Like, try to bring as much of that creativity and playfulness into the situation.
I think you should still feel like you're creating your life as you're living it. You're creating it, you're living it, you're exploring it, you're doing things that you're figuring out what it is that you do that no one else can do.
Right.
And whether that's at work or on the side or wherever, or it's somewhere in the middle, you're taking things that you're uniquely good at based on your experiences that you've had, the things that have hit the neurons in your brain and affected you to be who you are.
Right.
And you're taking that and you're taking the things that you think are good about the world and you're amplifying that in some way. In some sense, you're taking what things that you think are beautiful or logical or really cool, and you're helping to make more of those things instead of just consuming those things. And so again, it's not saying like there's no value judgment. I think it's like it's really cool if someone's in a position where they can go like start a company. I think that's also often like put on like the pedestal of like the
modern,
one of the coolest
like,
things
thing.
that you can do is like to really like craft something, forge it from nothingness. But that it's like that's
one way to
that's one way to
self-actualize.
do it. There's a lot of other things like creating your own life. I think is just more like writing a book, writing your
Anything,
thoughts
really.
down. Like, yeah.
Just express it to the world. I think it's sad. I know a lot of personal friends of mine that, not to belittle any occupation, any pursuit, but they're living for their weekends, right? Like
Right.
they do a 9 to 5. They're not inspired. They're clocking in and out and sort of waiting.
Right.
And you kind of have a little burst of energy on the weekend, and you do something that you kind of like. But
Like, what are you waiting for? Like, you're spending your whole life waiting.
yeah, and
Like,
I
if
think
you literally like look at the pie chart of your life, it's like 85% waiting.
waiting
what
for like
kind of
your
life-
friend's wedding invitation, your friend's throwing a cool party in a month. You're excited for that, and that's sad. I think it's like literally like people are in their primes and they're waiting to die.
And I think we're saying this because we've been there, right? This is not like a high, like, oh, like poor people. It's like I've been there. I think you've been there.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I think trying to figure out like how do you get back on the horse? Like from if you're there, like what is this sense that you want to tap into where you're not there?
No, I think that's great that you bring up the personal like feel, right? I think at my, when my first company got acquired by a larger public company, I was waiting. I was waiting to vest out my stock schedule, hit the 1 month, 1 year cliff, because one, I didn't feel empowered, didn't feel valued, didn't feel like any of my hard work that I could be putting into my creativity were being received by the execs back in HQ that was sort of across country, right? And I think as someone that wants to do good work, if you're not able to be full bandwidth communication to really express your ideas and see those actualized in the real world, you're not be able to put your full creativity and playfulness into it. I got into a personally like a waiting mode. I remember like, hey, I'm going with my parents to visit Shanghai and Hong Kong in October. Like,
That's
cool.
all
Like
there is.
it's like I'm
and I think
waiting for that.
I think the life that we've been living for the last couple of years, like even though it's been a lot of like
Well, we're working way harder than we ever worked.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I work way like phenomenally harder now than I ever even could have when I was working at Google. Like there just wasn't even that type of thing to dig into. Like there was no there to really do. And it's cool. Like I haven't once looked at the clock in like 2 years and been like, oh, like when can I go home? It's like it's a completely different feeling where it's like, hey, I want to. Yes, I need breaks. Like I'm going on a 10-day vacation in a month. Like it's nice to have breaks. There's no denying that, but like work is fun. It's like this sense of like making things. And again, like not everyone can just jump from where you are to like running your own company. And that's like, I want to dispel that notion that that's what we're saying that everyone should do. But what I am saying is like find the person that you know who's working hard on something. That person you know who has a side project or their own company or whatever, or writing
and
a
that's
thing.
You.
Find that person and hang out with them. How about that for a start? Like that was something that was extremely valuable for me. I know it's part of like what brought us together too when we were initially starting the company is like find someone who seems like they've tapped into this. Like they have a sense of identity because they're a person who's doing a thing and they're like going 110% at that thing. Find that person and like spend time with them. Literally just like absorb
magic.
And then try to like help them, try to do something, try to like be like them, try to make your own thing or help them with their thing and like and feel it. Because I think there's this thing that happens where you switch from being like it's 4:45, I'm out of work in 15 minutes and then I can go like consume, I can go eat, I can go watch Netflix, I can go like take whatever, like life will be good once I'm off of work in 15 minutes. You go from that to like, hey, I'm really relishing this. Like I'm planning to do this thing that's going to make a dent in the world. Let's go. How do I check more boxes and make it more perfect? How do I do better at breaking the status quo? Find the people, like there's someone, I'd say everyone knows someone who's doing some hustle, some spark. Like find that person and like you'll find like, yeah, that person might be like, I don't know, more stressed, more busy or whatever, but I guarantee you that person will be happy because that person is, they know who they are. They've done stuff. They're laying a road of bricks behind them, and that gives them a sense of who they are, what they built. They have things that they're proud of and a sense of who they are because of those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great tip for all of us, right? Don't be afraid to randomize. I think it's very easy to get in a schedule where you're just like, all right, 9 to 5, Netflix, boom, boom, boom. Maybe do like a little bit special dinner on a weekend and go hike or something.
I think part of the other thing is like don't be too fancy or smart about it. Just do something. Like I think that it's easy to diss ideas as being too little or concepts as being too little.
I think that's like one thing that I think that's very true. I think I used to be like that. I used to be a very good armchair quarterback and be like, oh, that idea was dumb, or like. And I think that it stemmed, or like, oh, like Snapchat's stupid, like whatever, the sexting app. And I think that stems from insecurity and jealousness.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing other people like living out their dreams and their goals, and you're like, fuck that. Like I think it's ego defense to like tear down, to be like, oh, they're not actually doing something great. They're doing some little joke of a thing.
But I think it's then goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like there's no open position to be like CEO of Tesla or design the next iPhone. Like if you want to be solving like the biggest problems, the stuff that wouldn't be trivial, the things that you think are actually cool. Take the coolest people that are doing the coolest stuff, like movie directors, politicians, whatever. Like if you want to swap into them, think about what they were doing before. Like they at some point were doing stuff that looked really, really small.
Yeah, Obama's community organizing the streets of Chicago.
Right.
Like, he was just like literally putting that,
Exactly. Like at some point, yeah, like you want to be doing this great thing, but it's like it's the video game, like you're your own video game character. Like you literally don't have enough XP. You have to do something that seems little. That seems like small. You have to do a little thing. You have to pack boxes yourself before you're able to like you
manage warehouses to pack them for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like you earn the right to work on bigger problems. But the thing is, like the hard work comes first. Like no one is ever going to just give you the keys to like a really intense, hardworking job that requires you to be smart and on and diligent and all the time. Like you have to earn that by being smart, hard, diligent on like a little tiny thing that seems like
baby
stupid,
steaks.
and then you have to crush it, and then you have to crush it, and then you have to crush it. and just keep doing it. Like you think, like I remember this personally in high school. I remember there was one point in high school where I was just like messing up. Like I remember I got like the mid-semester report card. And I was just like failing classes and stuff. It was bad because like there's just like no excuse really. I was just like, I thought chemistry was stupid. Why do I have to do stoichiometry? Like I thought, like, why am I learning Spanish from this dumb lady? Like, why am I just like, this all sucks. And like, it was interesting.
Teenage Michael angst.
Yeah, teenage Michael angst. And the thing is, I wasn't necessarily wrong. There are better things I could have been learning than chemistry, honestly. I wish I'd been learning computer science, or I wish I'd been learning finance or something, but whatever. What my parents and even my like chemistry teacher taught me or told me at the time was like, look, like this is the stuff that you have to do. Look at it as a game. Because hey, guess what? If you go to a really good college, then you get to start doing the kinds of stuff that you want to do. But in order to do that, you have to like show beyond a reasonable doubt to anyone that you're capable of being diligent and thorough and handling the bullshit. Because there's always going to be like a thick layer of like busy work or
status quo, like stuff society pulling you to the norm.
You have to jam. You have to like dig down and do it. And that's table stakes. Like you have to do that in order to get into a good college where you're going to be around other intellectual people and really great professors and be able to study whatever you want. But in order to do that, you got to like put in the work, even if it's not sexy. Just see it as a game. And I think that's true in life too. It's like, hey, yeah, if you want to, I want to be big shot running a Fortune 50 company, right? Like I think we both want to be like doing incredible stuff, but it's like, hey, in order to do that, we have to kill it at this level that we're at. We have to do 110% at this level in order to make it to the next level.
Yeah, like we made it from literally like we wanted to hit a goal of like $10,000 a month.
Yeah,
we hit that. Now we wanted to hit $100,000 a month. We hit that. Now it's like, hey, we have a multi-million-dollar business. How the hell do we, we want to be running a multi-billion-dollar business,
right?
And like we're stacking up the levels. I think it's like it's damn cool, and I think when you mentioned in the very beginning, it doesn't get easier,
right?
And it's just like this, we're working probably harder,
yeah,
in a lot of ways.
I think that there was this feeling I had when I was like, I don't know, 16, where I was like, I could do a lot of stuff. I could be freaking president. I could like, who the hell is Steve Jobs? I could do that. Like this feeling I had, like I could do anything. I think a lot of people are born with this potential.
And they get that beaten out of them by society, right? Kind of.
Yeah, you absolutely get it beaten out. And I think that but people also sometimes beat it out of themselves, because I think you can't go from being 16 years old to just being Steve Jobs. Like I think your ego wants that, is say, hey, I'm smart, I'm good at all these things. Let me do all this. Give me that position.
Right.
And then we therefore will maybe this is personal, like we try to avoid things that seem too little. We try to avoid things that don't feel cool enough. Like, hey, I'm cool, I'm smart, I'm Mr. Big Shot. Why the hell am I going to write a 100-word thing every day? Why the hell am I going to go take 10 stupid-ass pictures every day? Like, that's not being Steve Jobs. That's not running the world. Like, why am I going to go pack some boxes? Like, that's not cool enough for me. I'm up here, that's down here. And I think getting over that and saying, hey, if you lower your standards drastically for the types of things that you can be creating, the types of ways
you can be being world class at, and
right.
you start owning it,
right, then you can start leveling up. But there's this sense where you have to have a big ego to be ambitious, but you also have to like tuck that away and be willing to like
grind it up and
not be like too fancy and just put in the hard work. Like another thing I always think about is like my grandparents. Like I know my grandpa he had like 2 jobs. He worked at Bausch and Lomb, like the lens company in Rochester, New York, and then on weekends he would like sweep the floors of banks. And it's like, that's hard work. Like I have a ton of privileges that he never had. As he was an immigrant from Ukraine, and like he had to do this stuff. He worked super hard. Why can't I work that hard? If I think I'm as smart as Steve Jobs or something, like, or smarter, like why can't I also work as hard as my grandpa? Like it's not an either or thing. Like I have no right to be too proud to work like to not work like 60-70 hour weeks like my grandpa did, because at least my hours, I have like more of an opportunity. I have more of a sense of I there's bigger things I can apply it to, and I'm lucky because of it. But I'll be damned if I'm not going to work as hard as he did.
Yeah, no, I think that's like part of like what the American dream is about, tying into like broader society, what like attracts so much people to this notion of, hey, like be able to fully engross yourself in something, grind it up, put in that hard work, and make something special.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a it's a cool story. Like I think that we should all like remember that, hey, like we're all of us probably are living much better than a lot of our ancestors, and we should be grateful and like applying that same sort of hard work ethic, but hopefully at a higher leverage, at a place where we're really be able to fully full bandwidth communicate ourselves and retain that playfulness and creativeness.
Yeah.
I'm curious, tying it into sort of just relevant, culture items today, like what people inspire you. I think we have a lot of tech examples, but it's not just tech, right? It's just like across all, creative aspects of society. I think we all have like different people that we think, hey, that person's magnetic. I want to like be in their universe.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kanye West is really interesting as a creative force. Like he's just trying to take who he is and extend it into his music and his fashion, into his like he's trying to like create this whole universe around him,
right?
That's like based off of his ideas and his concepts. And he had to start by being a producer and making beats for other rappers,
yeah.
like for Jay-Z and Cameron and stuff. He had to start off making beats, like working for other people until he got his big break and he could be a rapper. And then he worked really hard at that. He talks about 5 beats a day for 3 summers, just like working on making just doing the good solid work. Because he, like, you can see where he's going today. He wants to have like an empire, but he still did the work 5 beats a day for 3 summers to get to a spot where he could get to a spot where he was even in a position to be running an empire, to be
do like a fashion line, to do shoes, to
just be a person, to be like modern, like royalty, to be a person that like anything he does, people are like, oh, interesting. Like people are curious about what he has to do.
Yeah.
And he's been on the scene for decades, right? He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I think if you're not familiar with sort of his trajectory, he, a lot of people are actually sort of hating him, hating on Kanye for like entering fashion,
for sure,
like aspects that he's not, quote unquote expert in. Like
right.
he's a musician. Stay in music, Kanye. What are you doing in fashion? But I think that's like him being able to do that is like, again, ties back into like our notion of full bandwidth communication. He wants to communicate through his fashion and his shoes and physical apparel.
Yeah.
Like, and he's doing it. You're not going to stop him.
Yeah.
Like, I think back to like the jealousness. You're not stopping people.
Right.
Don't stop people. Like, help them. If like I can help a friend make the next Facebook, at minimum, I'm probably going to be invited to a cool IPO party, right? Like,
yeah.
It's all about putting good karma, helping people achieve and work hard at what they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone interesting to me that I stumbled upon recently. Actually, I think Mike, you showed him to me. Is this character Rich Chiga, a 16-year-old Indonesian rapper? I was just looking up his background earlier. He's homeschooled, learned English through YouTube.
Yeah.
And he has a viral video where he's, got a pretty big rap hit. Love to sort of just play it for you to give you a sense of, who is he, what he's about.
I love that this guy is Indonesian. When I first saw him, I thought he was like a kid from the suburbs. But I love that he's Indonesian. That just gives him so much, like, even more cred.
Yeah, you think he's like an American.
Like, he's just like a phony, but like, it's like, dude, I don't know. Living in Indonesia is probably a hard ass life. Like, on that compared to like the average American, like that's actually like street cred if you're from Indonesia. It's not easy.
Yeah, you guys, we'll have the link for the full video. But yeah, I think he represents to me someone that's like very magnetic because he owns his personality. Yeah, he's a 16-year-old kid, and his confidence is off the charts. Like, I think there's obviously some like self-parodies of what is considered rap culture, but he owns it in a way that's like that makes it his own, right? He's communicating himself in a very, I think, honest way that like speaks to me, and I think it's like, hey, like more people should like in the music world, be more you, right? Like be the most authentic, loud version of you.
And I think this is why we are drawn to entertainers so much, is because It's that very real sense of we see them expressing
It's
themselves.
a superpower of yourself, right? It's like a superhero version of you, of what you want to be.
Right, exactly. But I think entertainment in particular is special because it's people full bandwidth communicating. We see it through their style, through their movements, through their voice, through their lyrics. We see like the way that someone is. We see them like becoming something through the things that they're doing. So like any entertainer we like is literally they're working hard as a means towards self-actualization, right? They're literally creating this identity in progress. They're not like figuring out who they are and then making it. Like they're doing stuff and then they're making it as they're doing it. I think a lot of times, like if anyone has any familiarity with like making music or doing other types of entertainment, like one of my favorite, I've done a lot of comedy writing, and there's one documentary I really like with South Park, like kind of behind the scenes of how they write an episode. And you think like, oh, you're just going to sit down, you're a professional, you sit down and everything you write is funny. But like the actual way that a lot of things work is you riff, like you think about like improv jazz, like you riff on things. And when something sounds good, you write it down. And that's how great things are created. That's how great speeches are created. That's how great entertainment's created, is you kind of like riff. You don't really know who you are. You're just trying things out. And then when something sticks, you go with it. And I think that's why it was so interesting about entertainers in particular, because there's a lot of really incredible scientists, politicians, thought leaders, business people. But what's interesting about entertainment in particular is just a very literal like demonstration of people like creating an identity,
playing, creating, and like projecting themselves. Because I think that's true to an extent, right? As a scientist, you're not communicating like your impulse. You're looking at the data, right? Like you're not making up your own theory. You gotta like make sure the equations actually predict, and you verify that by your observations. Or politicians, right? Like I think a lot of people hate politicians is because they're like zero bandwidth communicating. Right. They're not saying anything. They're just like, gotta A/B test every single sentence I say. I think that's a reflection of like, again, like who we look up to and are attracted to.
But one thing I would say, just to like give props to like, all these other disciplines in the world, like outside of entertainment, and to draw some comparison, I think you look at like the Golden Gate Bridge or the iPhone or walking on the moon, and these are incredible things. And like the average person, I don't think knows who architected the Golden Gate Bridge, but you'll know of the Golden Gate Bridge. Right. And that's still incredible. That's still like self-actualization. It's not, self-actualization doesn't necessarily mean that like your name is plastered on billboards everywhere. Right. Like it doesn't mean you're Kanye West. Like you can also design and do work that you're proud of that doesn't have your name on it. Like having your name on it is like very, I think it's one case. It's one case. But I think there's other things that you do where it's like, if you're going into work every day to work on the Golden Gate Bridge, you could see how that's something you'd want to go.
That's super high leverage, right?
You want to go 110% at it. You're doing something that you're proud of. You're doing something incredible. Or like, I always think of like NASA Space Command in the 60s.
You're saving like millions of minutes per like year probably of people communicating of commuting back and forth,
and you're making something beautiful and iconic. Right. Like there's that sense of like, I'm taking what's beautiful about the world and I'm making more of it. And then you know who you are, because when you go to bed at night, you're like, I'm the person who does that. And then that's your identity. You are what you do, and you're figuring out your identity through the things that you do. And I think one nice note that we could wrap up on is this idea of like, what are you going 110% at? Like there should be something that you feel like you're going 110% at. And at Nootrobox, and when we're thinking about biohacking, we're always thinking about this sense of enhancement. So how do you be a better version of yourself?
Right. And I was going to say like biohacking is that meta tool that lets you be, that 10%, 5% better version of yourself. Where you have a little bit more, stamina and creativity and just more memory, more RAM to like mix and remix ideas. Yep.
And because everyone has the same 24 hours in the day, right? When you realize like, a homeless person, the president of the United States, everyone has 24 hours in the day. And I think one thing that we're really trying to do is as leaders is like shine a light on ways of spending those hours, right? The clock keeps ticking, like where you're getting good at the game you're playing, like you're putting your hours towards something, and that's the thing you're getting good at.
Do you want to be world class at your 9 to 5 right now? If not,
What do you want to be world class
Yeah.
at? Like do everything you can. There's no judgment. Like you got to do. Necessity is real. You got to do what you got to do. But what else are you doing to kind of like point yourself so that the hours in your day you're spending on this sense of creativity, of being impulsive, of making things, breaking the status quo, and then of those things, like go extra hard at it. And that's where biohacking and enhancement comes in, is like how do you do more of that?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I guess we could just cut this in. Like,
Yeah.
find us if you like what we're talking about and you have feedback, suggestions on how we can keep improving, incorporate your questions and answer your questions. Find us on YouTube, subscribe. Find us on SoundCloud, or also find us on iTunes, where we have a podcast series that updates weekly. Thank you.
Thanks.